Hi, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. For today's episode, I want to talk about creativity and art and how the avoidance you have to your creative practice might just be the same avoidance you have in romantic relationships, or any relationships really, but I think I'm going to look at it through the lens of romantic relationships. And I think this is a very common experience. I've talked about this before. I've written about this on Substack. One of my most popular posts on Instagram right now is of a Substack essay that I've written about how you might not want them, you might just want to practice devotion. And I think creativity is the best way, creativity in your artistic practice is the best way to practice devotion. And the relationship you have with your art is the relationship you have a lot of the times with your romantic partners, because it kind of, I think, brings out the same emotional experiences within you. Now, obviously not everybody who listens to my podcast is an artist. I think a lot of people are though. I myself, I am a writer. I write all the time. Right now I'm in the process of writing a novel, fiction novel, like proper novel. I'm actually devoting time and energy to sitting down and doing it rather than what I've been doing in the past, which is kind of trying to fit it in between other things that I've been doing in life. And obviously that wasn't working. And, you know, you look up any writer's story and they all say the same thing. It's, you have to devote time to it. You have to make it part of your life, not the other way around. It just kind of, it fits in whenever it fits in. Like, that's not how you get anything done really, especially something like an artistic project. And art itself, the creative practice, is a practice. You need to do it regularly and consistently to hone your skills, cultivate a certain craft, a certain ability. And so now I'm in the process of that. And I've realized throughout my own journey right now, I mean, I've written throughout my whole life, but now being in a headspace where I'm really being serious about it, or intentional about it rather, I'm realizing that it is bringing up a lot of the same wounds and avoidance I have towards romantic connection. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I think there are many parts of our creative life, whatever creativity might mean to you, right? Because creativity can manifest in a variety of ways, as I've mentioned. But I don't think it's a coincidence that your creative life is similar to your romantic life, because it is a type of creation in both areas. When you're in a relationship, you're creating something, you're creating a relationship. So it does require the same things of you that your artistic practice would require. And that is really interesting and really fascinating to me. And I don't think it's something that should be taken lightly or seen as not important or inconsequential, because I do think that there is something to learn about both sides of this if you pay enough attention. So what I'm realizing right now as I'm going through my own journey is that a lot of the same wounds, like I said, when it comes to a romantic relationship in terms of avoidance, are manifesting in my creative practice. So some of them I want to explore in this episode. A fear of commitment. A fear of commitment is a big one. And I think obviously so clear when you're in a romantic relationship with somebody where you have to commit to cultivating a relationship. Now, this could also apply to friendships too, right? Platonic relationships, because you're committing in that sense too. You're committing to a friend, to being a friend. Just like you're committing to being a partner to somebody. It's not easy and it requires things of you. You have to be responsible for somebody else's experience. You're not going to be completely and totally in control of it all the time, but you are responsible to an extent for how they feel and their life as well, if you're entering an agreement with each other. The same thing kind of applies to your creative work. You are now responsible for this experience. You're going to get out of it what you put into it. And it is a commitment. You're committing to doing it. And it's something that requires you to be diligent, to step up, to show up regularly. And that's a lot. And so if you struggle with a fear of commitment, that's going to manifest in both areas of your life. And I think it's really important then to dissect why you fear commitment. So let's say you fear commitment because you worry that you'll lose yourself in this relationship. You'll lose a part of you that is who you are, your autonomy, your agency. You won't be free to do whatever you want, right? If we're looking at that from the perspective of a romantic relationship or even a platonic one, but let's say romantic for the time being, for argument's sake, that makes sense. You know, you want to be free. You want to be a free agent. You want to do what you want to do. You don't want to have to be responsible for anyone or have to, you know, answer to anybody else. Sure, right? That is a reason why many people have a fear of commitment. That also applies to your creative work. you don't want to be responsible for it. You don't want to lose yourself in it. You don't want to devote yourself because you lose a sense of autonomy and control and agency of deciding like, I'm just not going to do it. I'm free. It doesn't work like that. You can't not do it, right? You can't be free of this responsibility if you also want a creative practice or if you also want to work on a creative project. You need to commit to it. So it's kind of like you're building a relationship with another person, but the other person is kind of your creative work, and it's you within this creative work, if that makes sense. So I think that's one way to understand why you might be experiencing this avoidance on either side. So like the avoidance you have in your creative work, avoidance might be also manifesting in your romantic relationships. Another reason for this avoidance that's manifesting on both sides of this might be that you fear not being good enough. And so you're avoiding this relationship, whether creative or romantic. Yeah, you might have to risk being shown that you are not good enough at something. But of course, the only way to get better at things is through practice. So being in a relationship with someone and being in your creative work is a type of practice. You have to do it over and over again and show up regularly. And risk being seen as not good enough, risk being not good enough, and seeing it in yourself that you're not good enough, that you kind of suck in certain areas of your life, of your romantic relationships, of your creative work, and being willing to really accept those faults and then work on them and believe that you're able to be better, to improve, to grow, because of course you are. We all are, right? Like but when you're avoiding those parts of you, you can never actually improve them. So then what happens is you fulfill that prophecy, right? It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You prove it to yourself that you're not good enough because you're not willing to risk not being good enough, right? Being seen as not good enough, but then improving, So it kind of all works in tandem like that. And I think you can see that if you maybe aren't in a relationship right now, but you're in a creative practice and you're realizing like, oh yeah, I fear not being good enough. What can I learn about that within this creative work that I can then take into romantic relationships, or vice versa? You're in a relationship and you're noticing that, okay, maybe this will also manifest in my creative work. How can I learn from this right now? What can I do to practice risking being not good enough so that I can be better at that, so that I don't limit myself when it comes to my creative work? I think the reason I wanted to talk about this is because I truly see all experiences in our lives as an opportunity for personal development, which sounds so insane, but I truly do. Like, everything is an opportunity for you to practice something that you get to see within yourself. Obviously, things can be really painful, uncomfortable, sad, so many things, right? There's so much suffering to life, of course. I don't want to look at every aspect of life as from like a toxic positivity lens, as though like every opportunity is a gift or every situation is a gift. I mean it more like you can always learn something from the circumstances you're in, whatever that might be. It could be a skill that will help you in the future. It could be seeing something about yourself that you never saw before, which is so amazing. And to avoid seeing those parts of yourself is so sad. I truly see that. I truly think that that's the way to approach all of life right now. So the avoidance you're seeing in your creative practice can help you be better at your romantic practices and vice versa, because it's all a practice. Like, the practice is the point, as I've said so many times, right? It all is a practice, and consistency and learning and doing it again and again and seeing these things about yourself. Another reason why you might be avoidant in your creative practice or in your romantic relationships is because you fear losing time. And this one's actually really specific, and it's something that I've had to, I've learned a little bit more and have really understood a bit better as I've gotten older, and have made it a point to really look into this experience. But I now realize that it is something that is kind of common, that a lot of us feel, but maybe can't articulate. This fear of losing time, right? So when you're in a flow state, whether with a person in a romantic relationship or within your creative practice, you do kind of fall into flow state, especially if it's something you enjoy doing and it's fun and it allows you to explore parts of yourself, and it is a kind of creativity in a sense, right? You're building something. It puts you into flow state, and flow state obviously feels great. It's like one of the best states to be in. You lose a sense of time and space, and you get to just be present, which is so hard to do in our Western world right now, because we're always on time for something, right? We're always on the clock. We're always doing something, planning something, having to be somewhere. But when you get to be in a state of flow, you lose all that and you feel free. Now, with that kind of freedom, there can be a lot of fear that comes up too, right? Because what if you immerse yourself in this relationship, right? Provided it's a healthy one, right? Like that's the lens we're looking at this through. It's a healthy relationship. It's not a toxic one. It's not one that's unhealthy for you that makes you lose a sense of yourself. It's a healthy relationship with a person that, you genuinely enjoy, that it's aligned with you. If you allow yourself to be immersed in that, or in your creative practice, right? Something that you also enjoy creating and building, you might lose track of time, because that is kind of the point of being in it. But to lose a sense of time, like to lose time, you might immerse yourself in it, you come out of it, and now who knows how long has gone by, how long has passed. That's scary. There's a fear to that. And I think that's a huge reason why I and a lot of other people I've talked to fear really giving into their creative work or giving into a relationship, right? Letting yourself be taken, being pulled under. I think that's the fear, right? It's like this being like subsumed by something. So you resist it, and you might want it, right? You might want a romantic relationship. You might want a creative practice to write a book, to create an art piece, whatever. You might want that, but you fear it at the same time because you worry that you're going to immerse yourself in it. Time will fly by, because of course it does when you're in flow state. And you'll come to consciousness again and realize that all this time has passed, and maybe you haven't gotten exactly what you're looking for. Or maybe this thing that you've been aiming for, this type of relationship, this creative project, is not living up to the fantasy you had in your mind. And so all this time has passed. It isn't a fantasy. It isn't perfect. And so that's devastating. And instead of sitting in that feeling, you'd rather avoid it. But the irony there is that I think when you allow yourself to be taken, right, to be subsumed by this experience, even if it's not perfect, once you're on the other side of that, you come back to consciousness, you become a bit aware of the experience, you're out of flow state. Even if the outcome's not perfect, it still feels good because you've allowed yourself to be immersed in it. I think the pleasure and the enjoyment is in the immersion, not in the outcome, as of course it's the journey, not the destination, but it's in that feeling of being immersed in it that feels so good, to be in it, right? To be all about it. That's what feels really good, but that's what we're resisting because we fear that that's going to be this portal to a loss of time. And then we'll lose this time and we'll look back and say, oh, wow, this thing's not perfect or amazing. But you're only looking at that from the place you are now, right? This is the only vantage point you have now, not the experience of being in it enough to see, oh, okay, it actually feels good to be in this flow state, regardless of what the outcome looks like. It's hard to see that when you're not, when you haven't entered that state yet. And so I think that's another big reason why many of us have this level of avoidance, both to our creative work and our romantic relationships. So again, I don't think it's a coincidence that they're so similar. It's a type of relationship that you're in. So I would implore anyone who recognizes a sense of avoidance in themselves to ask yourself, okay, how is this manifesting in my life, in my relationships? How is it manifesting in my creative work? And what can I learn from either of those to help me navigate both sides of this? Because the point, I think, ultimately is to be able to kind of, I don't want to say control your avoidance, but to work with it, to understand it enough so that it doesn't control you, so that you aren't preventing yourself, standing in your own way, sabotaging yourself from cultivating the life you want to live, right? Being in a relationship that you enjoy and letting yourself be in it, or working on a creative project and completing it and feeling that sense of accomplishment. Because that would be really sad to prevent yourself from doing that. That defeats the purpose of what you're trying to do, which is to find that sense of accomplishment, that sense of feeling like you did something for you, not even for praise or applause or anything like that, but for you, to show yourself that you did something that you wanted and you did it. Like you pushed through all the resistance, you pushed through all the discomfort, and you completed something that you set out to, whether it's a romantic relationship or a creative project. And I think, again, you can learn a lot from either of those. So I would say, if this resonates with you, if you notice this about your own creative work or your romantic relationships, journal about it. Really think about how your specific avoidance manifests, because everybody's avoidance is going to be different. I just gave a few examples of my own, and then also other people that I've talked to who it seems to be these three I think seem to be the most common when it comes to avoidance in creative practices or romantic relationships, but there can be a plethora of avoidant habits that manifest for you. So you have to be really clear and specific about what those look like. And I think it's important to be specific, because if you aren't very specific on how it manifests, you won't know how to work on it. You won't really understand what you need to do to battle it. I don't say battle like it's a fight, to combat it, to balance it out. You need to get really, really specific on what is actually happening here specifically. So if it's a fear of commitment, specifically why, right? What specifically about commitment is scary? If you keep it too broad, you're not going to really know how to approach it. But like I always say, I offer one-to-one calls if you want to explore these things in more depth with me and get my kind of objective perspective on this, help you sort through some of these thoughts or experiences. I'm not a therapist, as I always say. But yeah, I just find it really interesting, and I've worked on it a lot for myself, and I know it can be helpful to have an objective perspective. So if you're interested in that, feel free to book a call over on my website. I write about these things on Substack, and follow me on Instagram and TikTok for my short form content. Other than that, I hope this was helpful. I hope it gave you some perspective on avoidance and some, nuanced understanding of it. Thank you for being here, and I'll be back again soon with another episode.